unrest in Russia at a time when the United States might strike Syria or Iran. And the protests in Russia would kind of make it difficult for the Russian government to respond. So this is a risk. No doubt the Israelis are pushing for some sort of attack just after the Russian elections.
And clearly they're hoping to tie Russia's hands so they can launch that attack and hopefully take advantage of them. How much does this have to do with oil and China's kind of burgeoning empire, and how much does it have to do with the larger grand chessboard?
Yes, I think it has a great deal to do with trying to deny China independent access to oil. That was the reason for the overthrow of Gaddafi. China had very large oil investments in eastern Libya, where the revolt began. And China has very large investments in Iran and gets, between 20 and 30% of its oil from Iran. And this, of course, was the policy that the United States used against Japan in the 1930s. It saw Japan a rising power, and so it cut Japan off from oil and strategic materials and rubber, and Pearl Harbor was the result. So they're trying the same thing with China. They want to be sure that China doesn't have independent access to energy, or not much independent access. They can't do that to Russia because it has so much energy. And I think the various pipelines that Russia and China will build to connect those two countries will certainly defeat Washington's plans, but they are directed at China's energy supply.
Obviously, it's risky to overextend an empire. Obviously, we were never set up to be an empire, but I guess what gets me is whatever moves they calculate, they always rely on us being totally stupid, like we can never figure any of this out, and we're always supposed to fall for every false attack they set up. I mean, how do we deal with that?
Well, but you see, most of the time they're right. Most people do fall for it. I would bet that if the average conservative American, the average Republican was witnessing what I'm saying right now, they'd be screaming and yelling at me, a pinko, liberal commie, unpatriotic. You see, they think that if you don't support everything the government says, that you're anti-American. They don't understand, they haven't any concept of patriotism means supporting the Constitution, supporting the truth, trying to keep your country out of trouble, and trying to keep other people from being victimized by your country. That's what patriotism is, but they don't know that. If I was in a live audience saying this, I'd be probably stoned to death. That's just what Americans are like. They don't catch on. The real question is the rest of the world catching on?
And that's what H.G. Wells says always happens to philosophers and thinkers, and they always get stoned to death. Anyway, what did you think of Obama's move to issue a presidential directive saying, yeah, we're not going to use the indefinite detention against Americans. I say so. Sure, the power may be on the books for future presidents, but states are starting to pass resolutions saying they won't go along with the NDAA. After all the deceptions on the NDAA issue, is he beginning to feel pressure? Is that why they put out this presidential directive?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether the American Civil Liberties Union would be able to find standing to bring a constitutional case. I think if a constitutional case was brought, even the Republican right-wing Supreme Court would have to rule that the National Defense Authorization Act is unconstitutional. And if they didn't, of course, it would probably sink the Republicans. But, I just don't think any of them can be believed. I wouldn't believe Obama. I mean, he's just maybe trying to cool down some heat. But look, 93 senators, I think it was 93, voted for it. I mean, I mean, 93% of the Senate voted to deep six the United States Constitution. And why? For what reason? I mean, where is the threat that requires this? I mean, where are you would think by now in the United States, after murdering huge numbers of Muslims, women, children, men, village elders, for over a decade, that there would be terrorists everywhere, that shopping centers throughout the country would be blowing up every day, everything, with power stations. It would all be, the country would be in ruins, you'd think by now. Well, but nothing has happened.
I guess it goes back to...
There's not been a single terrorist event, and so the FBI has to go out and concoct them and make them up. And find some poor, stupid guy and put him up to an FBI plot.
And you're not just saying that. They've admitted dozens and dozens of these cases were total sting operations.
Yeah, that's all they are. There's no real cases. And so what is the threat that required deep-sixing the Constitution?
The power of nightmares and what's under the bed.
Senators run to vote for it. And why didn't this cause the people to revolt? And don't they understand the Constitution is what the country is? I mean, their country was repealed. and they just sit there like, duh, oh, it'll never apply to us. It's only for terrorists.
It's a shame.
It'll apply to whoever the government wants to apply it to, because no evidence is required. We would never know if it was applied to terrorists because there's no evidence. You don't have to show anything.
It's a shame, though, because the Patriot Act was horrible. It was also doing away with large sections of the Bill of Rights and Constitution, but there's at least a debate about it. It was a public controversy to the general public, even if nothing was changed or stopped. But the NDAA, it's been all this game of smiling and pretending it's not going to happen. I guess that kind of crocodile style of attacking in politics.
Well, I don't know what else to say about it other than the country was stolen, because the country is the Constitution, and stolen by a handful of people in Washington. And why? What is the real agenda? It can't be terrorism. There's just not any. I mean, we can say, oh, well, the Taliban are terrorists. They're killing our troops, but we're occupying their country. So they're not terrorists. There's no acts of terrorism in the United States. So what is the reason for this?
And we're premiering Alex's new documentary tonight on this program. Hopefully you'll have a chance to check it out later. But we show some of the statistics. Scientific American covered it. A lot of other statistics show things like bee stings or slipping in the shower kill more people than terrorism. It's just a total hoax. Ordinary life is more dangerous. Driving down the road is more dangerous. So many things.
Right. That's exactly the case. Look, the war on terror is a hoax. I've said it before. There aren't any terrorists. It's a hoax. It was a hoax to destroy the Constitution and gain unlimited power. And it was a hoax to start these wars in the Middle East. There's no basis for it. There's no evidence of this terrorist stuff. And especially after they claimed they killed bin Laden. I mean, he was already dead for 10 years, but they killed him again. Yeah. So if Al-Qaeda is such a pathetic organization that it leaves its mastermind in a house, unarmed, with no troops, no guards, and 2 women to protect, then obviously it's not a threat. Al-Qaeda couldn't possibly be a threat if that's how they protect the mastermind, the leader, the most dangerous man on earth, Rumsfeld told us, or Cheney, or both of them. And obviously, the organization doesn't even exist. I mean,
but I guess you take a questionable staged death to cover up for questions of providence and questions of birth, and that whole thing with Obama and his birth certificate, a whole nother issue. But
well, I think the whole thing was done. Of course, it was a hoax. It was done to boost Obama in the polls, so the Democrats would not challenge him for the nomination. Mm-hmm. He was so low down that some of the Democrats were talking about running somebody against him in the nomination for, in other words, not just give the sitting president the nomination. So I think it was done to boost his standing and to stop any challenge from within the party. Now, of course, he doesn't really have a challenge from the Republicans because they mass such a collection of dopes, idiots, that nobody would vote for them. I mean, clearly Obama will win re-election. I mean, unless something just dramatically terrible happens.
Paul Craig Roberts, for years you didn't have your own website. You appeared on so many other great Patriot websites. I want to make sure people have a chance to check out your work at your blog. Tell them where it is and how often you're going to be posting content there. It's
paulcraigroberts.org.
That's simple.
It's that simple. And all of my columns for the last 10 years are posted on it, and some other things. And I tend to write a good deal, although I haven't the last week or so. So there's almost always something on it, something new. But there's enough there. I mean, you'd have to read for a long time to get through all of it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate your work as well, of course. Thank you, sir, and we will talk to you in the future.
Look forward to it.
And we'll be back from break, but after that, we will be premiering the new documentary, New World Order, Blueprint of Mad Men, Alex's latest documentary. It's going to be right here for PrisonPlanet.tv subscribers. It'll be out there for the public later on, so we'll hope you stay tuned and watch that. It's 40 minutes long. Thanks, and good night.
Time to get out of the comfort zone because these people aren't playing games.
We're going to organize. Humanity's going to come together. We are swinging muskets here, toe-to-toe with the globalists. They're bloodied. We're bloodied. It is absolute total war. Signing these evil 1776 flags. Doesn't get any more out of control than that, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty un-American what we're doing here at INFOWARS.com. I mean, not only are we promoting liberty, but we're selling 1776 flags. Now that is Al-Qaeda.
And we are back from break. As we mentioned at the top of the show, this is a special episode of the INFOWARS Nightly News because we have a very special debut premiere tonight here for you for PrisonPlanet.tv members. But first, we turn to today's daily quote, and it is, "The majority rule only works if you're also considering individual rights, because you can't have 5 wolves and 1 sheep voting on what to have for supper." That's Larry Flint, essentially reflecting many of the quotes of the Founding Fathers, including Benjamin Franklin and others who talked about 2 wolves and a sheep voting for what's for dinner under quote-unquote democracy. Now, what you're about to see is a 40-minute special documentary titled The New World Order, Blueprint of Madness. And this was the special premiere that audiences, the sold-out audiences, I might add, saw in the past week in both Orlando and Dallas, Texas. It was an accompaniment to Alex's speaking event, The Blueprint to Defeat the New World Order, first highlighting how crazy and out of control their own plans, and most of all, this hoax. It totally turns the tables on the hoax